And here we go. It is January. Welcome, welcome everybody to Raising Multilinguals Live. Just a few minutes ago, Uta told me she was shocked that it is already mid-January. And my reply is, don't you worry, it'll be mid-June pretty soon. When here we go. How time flies. Okay, thank you everybody. My name is Tetsu Young, and I'm going to throw this to Europe. Uta, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm taking it over. My name is Kuldeep Matharu from Ute's International Lounge. And we are here in the Netherlands, right, with Deborah and Kuldeep as well, our guests today, talking about supporting multilingualism at school and at home. Let me just briefly introduce our guests. So Deborah Perrin, has worked with multilingual learners for over 3 decades. She is experienced in introducing and developing provision for emergent multilinguals in new schools. She believes in partnership and collaboration as essential in developing inclusive school communities, and her teaching is across the age range of 3 to 16-year-old children. So she advocates for multilingualism in schools and the inclusion of translanguaging as a learning tool. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you.
And Kuldeep Matharu is a skilled EAL teacher for primary school age range. As an internationally minded multilingual, she values fostering positive relationships with the parent community. As an educator, she puts students in the limelight, nurturing a love for learning in every unique child. Like Deborah, translanguaging is at the forefront of her practice, and she loves to learn from the students about their linguistic backgrounds, cultures, and life's experiences around the globe. Student well-being is also at the core of her classroom ethos, and happy, well-rounded individuals generally mean her students are motivated to learn. They both work for the British School of the Netherlands. I cannot say this word, I'm sorry. British School of the Netherlands. So the topic of today is supporting multilingualism at school and at home. And I would like to start with finding out what made you both decide to become EAL teachers, and maybe you can quickly explain what EAL means. There are other definitions of it, also ESL, etc. So who would like to start?
Shall I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah. Well, I applied for my first teaching position in the London Borough of Waltham Forest, and I was appointed as an infant teacher with the responsibility post of bilingual support coordinator. My Punjabi and bilingual upbringing were an asset to the school, and I was given the opportunity to float across the classes for a term when I had my first reception class back in those days, which is F2. This is when I worked with young students, and back then I was translanguaging, communicating across the languages English and Punjabi, helping the children to settle. This is a role that was alongside being a class teacher. It sparked my love for multilingualism. And when I applied for the class teacher position at the BSN, after 6 wonderful years in the UK, I felt, okay, time for an adventure overseas. I was appointed at the BSN, and the head teacher offered me at the time my EAL position. And I excitedly took the position, and I've never looked back.
Well, like Kuldeep, I started my journey in London. So my first teaching positions were in schools which were basically multicultural, multilingual, but being a monolingual, having grown up as a monolingual, but had parents who fostered a love of other cultures and languages. I just wanted to know more. So I undertook an MA in child language acquisition and development. And then that led to a job with a London borough for their language service. And then I had a fantastic experience of working with so many different schools. And my love of multilingualism really developed from there. And like Kuldeep, I ended up working at the British School in the Netherlands as the EAL coordinator, as it was back then. Mm-hmm. I think you wanted to know about the definitions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to do the first one, Kuldeep?
EAL is English as an additional language. And as Uta was saying, that we have also recognised EFL. Some schools, depends where the settings are, use EFL, English as a foreign language, or ESL, English as a second language. All those terms, we kind of put them under a similar umbrella, whether it be EAL, ESL, EFL. It's thinking of the whole aspect of having our multilingual learners who have many different languages at home, or perhaps the one additional language. So regardless of what the term is across the globe, it's covering all those different acronyms.
And it's probably worth adding that for us, in our context, we decided to stick with EAL. I know there are new terms out there now, because the reason we adopted English as an additional language was to give that immediate signal that we see the students who are coming in and learning English for the first time, that they've already have other languages, and this is a positive addition, that it's a positive starting point.
Yes, we wanted to make it seen as additive to the learner, as opposed to it being perceived as a deficit. So, you know, gone are the days when you had multilingualism or bilingualism, or even from the time when I was at school being raised bilingually. I do remember my dad had stopped speaking to me in Punjabi, for instance. So, and back in the 70s, there wasn't enough research thrown out there, or perhaps people weren't reading as much about it, but it was to basically say that how additive it is as opposed to deficit for each individual learner, you know, and it was better for the brain, all the research that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then like Deborah said, that it's in addition to something that the children already have, so some language knowledge in other languages that they are building up on, right? So
yeah.
And I would like to add also that there are different kind of definitions depending on whether it is English or German or Spanish, French, etc. So we can replace the different letters and form other acronyms depending on the language and the context. But what we wanted to focus on is what does an EAL teacher or someone who is supporting the school language for the children who don't speak it or don't use it that much at home or outside of school do, and how this all looks like. So the first question would be, yes, who is actually benefiting from EAL?
Well, both of us, when we looked at this, everybody in the school benefits. So obviously the who is the big question here. So obviously for direct support, the students benefit, but actually the students who are not receiving EAL also benefit because of the positive way in which we approach the support and the way we frame learning a language and language acquisition and everything that comes with that, and about valuing identity as well. So I'm sure Kuldeep can add to this, but we do a lot of work as a specialist team with colleagues, with parents. It's about the whole school ethos as well. And we know and we can see that when the provision is put in a particular way, it benefits the whole community. So the label EAL sometimes undersells perhaps the enormity or the larger scale aspect of having this kind of provision in your school, or even recognizing that there are English as an additional language learners within your school. I think, Kuldeep, you can probably add to that.
Yes, I think it's a big question when we were thinking about this in a deeper context, that it brings all staff, students, supervisors, everybody who is on the premises within the organisation of a school. It brings everybody together. You know, the fact that we have always involved all of our staff within the context of making everybody aware about multilingualism and how we celebrate the different cultures, the diversity, including everybody, so that nobody's left out and feels that they belong to a community. So the community spirit is there. We have offered regular CPD training sessions. That's continuous professional development sessions for our staff. We share research, and we have offered twilight sessions as well as part of this continuing professional development, just to discuss, for instance, some of the texts, so that we are making people aware that there's more to it than just what's on the surface, the superficial elements of what some person might see. Okay, they're doing something to do with languages, I don't need to know about that. But it's all about challenging mindsets, opening up people's minds, making people curious about language learning as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think also for parents who send their children to a school where there is EAL support or that kind of support or help, it is also important to know that, well, it's support or help for children whose home languages are not the school language, or maybe who have another home language that is their stronger one and have also the school language, but don't use it that much or as much as it would be needed in order to be on the required level in that particular year group. Because I would like to now get a little bit deeper, because someone at the beginning, when my children started to go to the school, everyone said, oh, is your child in the EAL group or not? And it was like, you're in, you're out. And if you're in, this means that your child is somehow has a deficiency, which was, from a parent's point of view, very difficult to handle. But then, thanks to teachers like you, it was very clear. You sent the message, no, it's actually something that everyone can benefit. And this came only from the parents. The children had a completely other view on that. They said, oh, you're doing cool stuff when you go out with Kuldeep, or when you're going to do special, you talk about special topics outside of the classroom or inside the classroom. So that is then the next question. But actually, it helps children who start with the school in the additional language, but also when they change school at any given time of their childhood and arrive to the school and previously had another language, right? So it's also for secondary school-age children.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. You've explained it very well. So it covers all the realms of language backgrounds, because, as long as we have been at the school, the demographics of the school are constantly changing due to just the climate. And we had, I guess, a high percentage of British students, also mixed with many other internationals as well. And across, as the time has gone by, we're having an influx of more internationals, so 80 plus nationalities, I believe, at our school setting. So, in terms of what you're explaining to that, I agree. It's the bigger picture is, we have students who, for instance, have one parent with one language, another parent with the other language, grandparents with the third language, and then aunts and uncles, somebody marries into another family. So it's all those different bigger factors that go beyond when you look at the family tree of that child. In an ideal world, we would love to spend more time getting to know our students' identities. We do make time for these sorts of elements, and we build on the knowledge we have of that student to ensure that they are making their language progress within the setting. We look at their starting points. I think I'm moving on to the next question, maybe. But yes.
Well, I was going to just add, you said something about secondary as well, Uta, and one of the positives of having some kind of dedicated EAL support is also that pastoral support. So if you're a teenager and you've moved country not by choice, to have those small group times, lessons, where somebody is really homing in on your needs and your well-being alongside of the academic English language acquisition. The feedback usually from the young people themselves is that has really helped them to make that transition from the old setting to the new. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
And yes, just to cover a little bit, you've made me think of a little example of how the settings that we have a variety of settings, which we will answer in the later questions. It's that what struck me this particular week is, I've got a student who I've been working with she actually said, actually, I love this classroom. It's a cozy place. And then afterwards, like within the half an hour, she said, "Oh, I love working with you, Mrs. Matharu." And that not just those tiny little remarks, but it makes you put yourself in the shoes of the child, the student, the learner. For a child to be happy and settled and to be ready to learn, they need to be happy, well-rounded, individuals. Well-being is a big part of what we focus on when we work with our learners. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat, so my voice might be quavering a little bit.
No problem.
Yes.
I think we slid a little bit towards the next question, which is exactly what you are starting now to share. What does EAL support look like, and how long does it take? So what it looks like, what you just mentioned, it's not only about language. It's not only about helping the child to build a broad vocabulary in order to be able to follow the rest of the class, but much more. Would you like to share more about this? I don't know who wants to start.
Yeah.
Can I just?
Yeah, you go.
Only because my thoughts are coming out of that in the context of the setting, in our setting at the British School in the Netherlands. We allow children to settle. We have time to observe. We make sure that we collaborate, and we're in regular conversations with the class teachers. There are students who come in who you immediately can identify who are absolutely new or shell-shocked. So, it's through our regular moments when we get to observe and get to know, build those connections with those students, we can identify who needs what level of support. Sometimes, that observation period can be over a week. It can be over a half-term period, again, depending on how much English the students come in with.
It's worth emphasizing, isn't it, that there's so much collaboration that goes on between the teaching teams, whether it's the class teacher, a form tutor, subject teacher. The amount of communication, observation, feedback, reflection is enormous that goes on. And of course, not everybody sees that. And even some of the students don't realize just how much is going on behind the scenes. In order to try and really make a program or an approach that is going to be, well, as individual as possible, but really meet their needs when they need it. So, I mean, most schools have regular assessment check-in points and reflection points, and our school's no different. So in those meetings, every child is looked at, including somebody who is an EAL learner. It's part of being a teacher, but I think for teachers like myself and Kuldeep who've chosen to specialise, we go into those conversations with a different perspective, and we're there, if you like, to as the gatekeepers, as the people to advocate for those young people who are in this situation. And then from then, we then make the plans and the schedules and who's going to do what, and it's totally ongoing. It doesn't just stop and start within 6 weeks.
Yeah,
and to go into further detail about the support, the type of support, it can vary. Again, we look at the individual. Sometimes it can be individual one-to-one support, and sometimes it can be a small group joining us. Sometimes it can be in the class setting. So, to reassure parents out there who might worry, oh, is my child missing the curriculum? Is my child missing out on subjects? Again, behind the scenes, there's a lot of discussion and collaboration that happens to ensure that either that the children are having parallel lessons, like to give you an example of some of my year 6 students who are within their intermediate to advanced level of English. However, there are still, they need support with grammar or the syntax, and sometimes with the content of what they're writing in English. In those situations, then, I would take up to a maximum of 6, sometimes 8 students, and the lesson is delivered alongside what the class teacher is doing. And the moments that I'm working with that group, or all EL teachers are working with those groups, they would be perhaps looking at vocabulary, looking at translanguaging, also including moments for the children to share their stories. Like today, we're doing the World War II, and one of the books that we're looking at is a lovely book, Resist. And there was the text. As we were reading the text, one of the students shared a lovely anecdote about his great-great-grandfather. But as he was trying to explain his detailed story, he was becoming stuck with English. So, got out Google Translate, and he was able to share the story in Russian. So it was a lovely moment of making, the student feel valued, regardless of which language that child is switching between, so it was lovely. It was just a lovely moment.
Yeah.
And we identified this whole thing. What does it look like? Excuse me, I've also got a bit of a throat. And we said, well, obviously, sometimes it needs to be one-to-one. Sometimes it's in pairs, small groups, sometimes larger groups, as Kuldeep was just describing. But also sometimes the EL specialist teacher goes into the classroom and may share a lesson or be there in the lesson working with a small group, so that it's very flexible. It's not the same as in the old days where you take a group of children and they wouldn't be allowed to be back in the classroom until they'd reached a certain level. And we don't follow a specific course book either, because it just doesn't fit with the kind of provision and the way our children are learning and acquiring the new language.
We have tried, I think, but we have tried, but I feel that's also part of teachers' development as well, that, we're always open to new concepts, ideas, ways of trialing things, whether they're online or through books. But, in the setting that we have, subjects change, curriculums change, and we're always looking to develop them at the next level. So we also have to be flexible in how we approach what we teach.
Yeah, and I think it's very important also for parents to know what you do and how you do it and what is possible, because very often when my children had EAL, because we didn't speak English as one of our home languages, but what we were not aware of is how close you can work with the child. Yeah, that you can have one-on-one attention, you can have, depending on what the child needed. And I was flabbergasted. I said, well, how can you do this? How many children do you have actually? Or how many teachers do you have to do this work? And then in the end, I said, how are you even able to do this? It was amazing to see also the outcome of this. That's to say that after a few months, sometimes years in other cases, then the child is, my children are all, it's their 4th, 5th language, the school language, but they are better at English than the others, at least at the moment. Now they are having exams. So this is how it is. But that's okay. Why. But it's important, in my opinion, for parents to know it's not something, they are not missing something from the rest of the curriculum, which was something I feared, I must confess, and I know other parents as well, or also parents whose children did not go to EAL. They said, oh, the poor one, does he need to repeat the year? And I said, no, why? They're doing the things. And actually, sometimes I had even the impression that my children got more in-depth knowledge of certain things that maybe the others had covered at home or so, or it was supposed that they would cover at home, but then with the EAL support, they got it more in the school setting, and it somehow they could memorize it better. I don't know if this makes sense, but that was my impression. So I just wanted to add this for the parents who maybe are choosing a school or are considering to have some kind of support, because it can also be for, as I said at the beginning, someone who, for a child who has English at home, but not that frequently, because the other parent is more frequently at home than the one who speaks English.
And we also work with students who are able to speak English. Most people would say, oh, they speak English fluently, but they don't have any literacy yet, because they've got literacies in other languages. And so, we also support and work with students like that, or we work with their teachers in order to support them so they know what to put in place for those students. But the day, certainly, it's been a long time since we've worked in a system where students missed out on something. In fact, we do everything we can to make sure they never miss out on the curriculum. And part of our role, the EL specialist team, is to support those teachers maybe who haven't had an opportunity to train in it or have limited knowledge about it, is to how do they adapt the curriculum so that it does actually support those children in their classes. And those children are in their classes for the majority of the time, even if one of us is working with them, to make the language accessible, but also to support the language acquisition with continuity and progression. And it's a huge skill for teachers. It's not an easy ask.
No.
And I think that's where you have a school who have some dedicated teaching staff for this kind of provision, it usually enhances what those children or young learners are going to experience in that school setting.
Yes, absolutely. And not only because, then thanks to that the other languages are also somehow acknowledged and welcome through the practice that you mentioned before, the translanguaging practice. Maybe you can share a little bit more about that.
You have to be careful because we might not stop.
Okay, so let's say just something very little, just scratch the surface. We will dedicate another session, I think, to translanguaging practices, because I know we could fill hours about that. Yeah. But yes.
Well, as Kuldeep already mentioned in her explanation as to why she became an ELL specialist, for the majority of the children are using translanguaging as a process naturally anyway. It was in the olden days where any other language was banned from school or the classrooms. Obviously, it didn't take place then. But since those barriers have been lifted, if I go into our Foundation 1, so the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, translanguaging is happening the whole time. Little groups of children are using their home or personal language to share a book, to count, and then turning to somebody else and having a go in English and switching back and forth. It's something that we see all the time without even having to put it in place. But we also have learned the value of actually, when we plan for it, it has a bigger impact on that whole self-esteem. So my teacher really values all my languages and that whole identity, and that I've brought something to this school that my school recognizes, and I'm good at it already as well. So there's just so many layers of why we believe it is such an important part of certainly an international school setting. Mm-hmm. And obviously we would say in all school settings. But I know Kuldeep's dying to share some of her recent experience with it.
Yes, well, we've had so many wonderful opportunities, like Deb was saying, that, again, I can recall moments during a wellbeing creative, like we have creative curriculum, which is a time where there are subject areas that are covered that, they're not fitting in with the science or maths or English or other curriculum areas, but it gives you the opportunity to draw on the skills that students are also expected to learn. Perhaps they fall into PHSE, that's the personal health, social and emotional aspects of the curriculum. So healthy minds was a big topic. And again, translanguaging opportunities have been encouraged when, for instance, we've been bookmaking, create a story for the younger audience of children. And when we talk about translanguaging, we also include those students who speak English at home, who have English as their main and only language, because this is also an element of making them feel included. English is also a language, and we are in the school in the Netherlands, so they are also learning Dutch. So we also perhaps would encourage them to use the key Dutch words that they perhaps know. And this is where we celebrate language and linguistic diversity in the school. It's turning it into a positive. And again, I've had examples of creative curriculum with year one. We've had yoga lesson, and then as part of the lesson, we've gone outside on a mindful walk. And then during the walk, it's like collecting outdoor, like autumn leaves and all sorts of colours we've been exploring, and then just encouraging the children to talk to each other, share the languages that they have. Does that word sound similar in your language? How do you spell it? How do you say it? And that's my passion, is also being genuinely interested in like the etymology of language, looking at what is the makeup of the word. When I discover something, it comes from Sanskrit, or it comes from, it's a Germanic language. And did you know this word is, the same as the word that you've just told me? It's making those connections, and you see the faces light up. So it's funny that I think maybe many of the students identify us as the staff who love languages, so they might share a little anecdote.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it raises certainly also the awareness of the diversity of languages, and that it's not only English only or Punjabi only or German, but that they are somehow interconnected between them. Sorry, I interrupted. Deborah.
No, I was just going to say, and with the secondary age students, if we didn't use translanguaging, we would be putting their learning on hold. Because you can't wait until they have this academic level of proficiency in English language. You've arrived at school, you're very keen to learn science, for example, and the only way to do that is to use and build on the languages that they've arrived in school with. And so we have to deliberately say to those students, you can use your personal languages in your learning, whether it's to research, and then try and find out how can I put this in maybe simple English at the beginning, but that switching backwards and forwards between languages, and giving them that independence as teenagers in particular is so important. And you see the way that they then take charge of their own learning, because we've enabled them to, and we haven't put this artificial barrier in place. And some teachers do worry, and some parents worry that perhaps they become over-reliant on the personal language or the home language. But then it's our job to reassure that we're monitoring this and we plan for it, and we scaffold in the use of the new language. And there's a discussion that's ongoing with each student about, okay, so have a go now, you can do this, you know how to do this. And gradually the two languages are becoming more and more balanced. But without implementing a translanguaging strategy, it would be incredibly difficult for those students who come and arrive in a school without the target language, the academic target language.
Yes, and I think you are mainly now thinking about children who come later and who don't start the school with the additional language, but maybe in secondary school, or let's say starting from 8 years onwards. I have a question, because this is something that some parents ask me, especially those who who move very often, and I'm going to put this question away because it's a bit outside of that question that we just shared or where you answered now. What is, in your experience, a good moment to change school language, or which is not a good moment to change school language, considering the curriculum, but also maybe the difficulty to catch up on the school language at some point?
Exam years. So I mean, that is such a big ask of any young person. If you're entering a school and you've only got 2 years before you have to take national exams, that by choice, I don't think I would want to do that to my own children. It's a really big ask. It's not impossible. It's not, but it needs a lot of hard work on behalf of the student. There needs to be support from home, and obviously there needs to be a lot of support within the school setting as well. I would say for me, the sort of 15, 16-year-old having to move with very limited, they may have social English, but they may have not really limited English for academic study. I think that's incredibly challenging.
Yes, thank you very much that you mentioned this, because this is a point where I wouldn't say I struggle with, but when then some parents say, yes, but my child had English since, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years at school, but it was only English lessons, learning English starting from age 11 once a week or once every 2 weeks, and then they want to send that child to an English-speaking school. That, of course, it depends on the level of the child, on how the child is coping with it, and many other factors. But tendentially, that age that you just mentioned, 16 years, or the age when they have the final exams, is not a good moment to do this for a child, to make this change, right?
Yeah. I don't know if Kuldeep, you have any other
No, because
observations on that?
I'm based in the primary phase, so I mean I would agree with Deb. And primary school, it's again I guess I understand it depends on the nature of the family. You do have to seriously ask yourself the questions about is this the right time? Younger children generally, they pick up language quickly because the nature of the learning is more through play. So there's a lot of parallel play opportunities, and children pick up language rapidly. And obviously when you move up further up the school, Key Stage 1, again, that's also quite a quick moment for children to pick up the BICS, the basic interpersonal communication skills. And as you move towards lower Key Stage 2, upper Key Stage 2, the challenge, it depends again. You look at the language. How close is it to English? Are there different scripts? How good is the child at picking up and attuning to another language, and also a different setting and a different culture? There's all sorts of bigger factors to think about. Obviously, it's your personal family decision. And, there's lots of things that you have to obviously talk through with your children, the older they are, and make them feel part of the decision making. And I do understand, because of jobs, sometimes, this is what happens. And I'm just thinking of the recent interview you had with Lena,
Yes.
Uprooted Girl, or Girl Uprooted,
Yes,
where it's those stories that it's good that people share those, but it's something that you have to seriously think about.
Yes.
I think a lot of what you say is really aligned with how my family, my parents, and how I, with my kids, think about big moves, big strategic moves. We try to involve the kids. I think you included this word, involving them. It makes the whole challenge much easier to, I guess, overcome, more motivating when you really involve them in the process. If you know that they have to move at 16 for whatever reason, planning ahead really helps. Not just the language, For example, my younger brother, when we wanted to bring him over from Japan to Canada, I was already here. I really enjoyed everything here, especially ice hockey. So and there's not a lot of ice hockey, but we got him to do, play a lot of ice hockey because we knew he didn't have a lot of chance to learn English or even less French since we're in Quebec. But we got him to play ice hockey for a few years, and he got to a very high level in Japan before coming here. And that was something that he had in common with all the other kids. So that was how we sort of supported his transfer from Japan to here, and I totally in agreement with with your idea of involving them, getting them into this
trying to get them on board and kind of make it a shared process.
Yeah, they have a stake in the outcome.
Yeah. In an ideal world, we'd love to be able to meet all the children, young people before they arrive, and then you can start some of that process and talking to parents and giving great suggestions like you're just talking about with your brother. I mean, it's not always possible, but interestingly, obviously we're now all more comfortable online, and we can meet families online before they arrive, and we do that. And I think where we have done that transition does seem to be a little easier for the all students, but particularly the older students, because they've got that opportunity to ask those questions that perhaps they don't want to ask mum or dad or whatever. And it just starts that relationship with the new place.
Yes. And it's not all, oftentimes it's not really just the language, the language is only part of the issue or the challenge. It's a lot of things around it. So the softer landing that you can prepare for them.
Yes, absolutely. So, and when talking about the whole journey where a child is accompanied by an EAL teacher or is supported throughout their whole childhood. Oh, sorry. When would be, I cannot share the slide, so there it is. When would a child be considered proficient enough? So when is the moment where you say, okay, now you can walk on your own? And we were talking about transition period right now. So I know that there is also like a transition period for the children who get your support as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, we really debated how to answer this, because our stock answer has always been, well, how long is a piece of string?
We often get asked this, don't we, Deborah?
I mean, we basically we need to know that they're able to be independent learners within the classroom setting. Now, that doesn't mean literally just the English language lessons. It's everything, the science, the humanities, everything. Having said that, there are personalities to take into account. We have some children who just make that decision for us, and they say, I don't want to be with you anymore. I just want to do this myself in the classroom, and we go with that. And there are just so many variables at play, but it's always a conversation which goes with their main class teacher, who sees them the majority of the time, ourselves, and also the student themselves. So there's a sort of triangulation going on, and then we will either reduce our input or totally step away, but we will keep monitoring them once we have stepped away. But the way, I think it can depend also on the physical building. We, at the junior school that we're both based at, we're very lucky. The layout of the building is such that the children see us around and about all the time. We're not sort of hidden away in a corner somewhere. So we have that day-to-day interaction with them, even when we're no longer directly teaching them. So there's a whole community around these learners. So it carries on. but through their class teacher or the teaching assistant or whomever. It's not really a journey that is just about working with your EAL's teacher.
Yes. I wanted you to say this because it is my experience, but also the fact for parents to know, okay, even if your child, for example, like the example you made just now, if a child says, I want to try it on my own, they can. But actually, if then at some point later they need a little bit more support, let's say in maths or whatever, it is there. So they can come back. It's not that once they decide for themselves it's over, then it's over.
Yeah.
No, it's not for them to take the decision, and also not for the parents alone to take the decision, but it's a teamwork, right? So I found that very important, and especially also that the children have a say, which was for me something. I mean, I grew up the children do what the teachers say, but having something to say as well and saying what kind of help you want or you need at the moment is also a very, very mature thing to say for children, but also something that builds what I like, the trust. Yeah. You're not alone on this journey. So whenever you need something, we're here, we get you covered. And that is something that for parents, I speak as a parent now, is very reassuring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, no, and to add to that, Uta, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's also, I think, again, we were talking about like our education provision is that such that we don't put a ceiling on achievement, you know. It's like even as adults, you know, we're talking about there's always opportunities to be more curious, to learn more, to find out more, to extend your knowledge. You know, that's part of life's journey. And it's instilling that within our students, with everybody, you know, whether it's staff, students, everybody who works at the school. And you've made me think of an example of some of my Year 6 students also who, again, they have felt, I don't need to come out, I know enough English, I can follow everything. And why some of them challenge, you know, but it's all about having those conversations alongside with the class teacher to explain to them, you know, you're doing extremely well, and we want to target whether it's an aspect of reading comprehension at the inferential level, or is it the applied knowledge parts of comprehension, or is there a particular skill they need to improve on in terms of grammar, applying any aspect of English that we need to work on, you know, and then that can be the specific targeted learning moment for them. And we also explain to the parents and the teachers that it could be a short, sharp burst, and then they can, you know, just fly in the classroom and take off with their learning.
It's probably worth adding that there's a lot of small group work that goes on within most primary schools. And so it's not unusual for the children to go and work with an adult in a small group. So they don't, for a lot of those children, it feels very comfortable to be working with an adult for a short, whether it be the maths group, a reading group, or writing group, or with us. So there's a lot of different adults all working together for the needs of the individual child. So I think we're very fortunate that in our setting that ethos is very embedded. And if you come to our school and you're young, you grow with that way of the school life being like that. So it's not a big deal to go off or work with another adult.
Yes. And you were mentioning the team. Can you maybe talk with numbers? So how many children and how many teachers who have EAL experience or who work with you are we talking about? So it's not like 2 teachers for 200 children, or what is the ratio?
Well, at the moment, there's so we're a multi-campus school, but the campus where both Kuldeep and I are based, we have across the two, so the primary and the secondary, there are 6 of us. I think there are 6 of us who do the dedicated, targeted teaching. But alongside of that, we have a lot of teaching assistants, And it may be that some of those teaching assistants are also directed to work with small groups on reinforcement or practicing or helping to make more accessible a task, or, you know, breaking things down. So we're a small team, but we reach far.
Yes. And maybe you can just mention how many children, how many students the British School has at the moment. I lost count. I don't remember now.
Oh, I don't know that one.
It's I think it's probably around 1,800 or 900.
Almost.
I might be
2,000.
overestimating a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's for the four campuses, though.
Yes.
So that's 2 secondaries and 2 primaries.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So just to give an idea, if someone is following or watching this later and they want to know how can we do this in our school, and how many children are there, and how many teachers would be needed, or can make this actually make it happen. So we're almost at the end of our session, but I would like you to share something that you would like parents or teachers to know about EAL. Or we have touched so many parts. I think we can pull these strings all together and maybe round them up somehow before then we ask the final question.
Shall I go first, Kuldeep?
Go for it, Deb, because again, this was a very big question, a deep thinking question.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things we've realised over the decades is that we're not always very good at sharing with the parent body just how much work goes on behind the scenes. So sometimes I think they might have thought, oh, well, you only take 4 or 5 children 4 times a week. Well, the EAL teaching role is nothing like that. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes. So we would love parents to understand that it's a pedagogy or a discipline in itself, and that to make this provision work, there's a lot of, as Kuldeep's already said, there has to be ongoing training, discussions, getting into planning, reflecting, keeping ourselves updated and upskilled as well. So we're regularly attending other CPL, continuous professional development sessions and meetings. It's as big a role as a class teacher or a subject teacher. It's specialist. And I think for both of us, we felt quite strongly about that. But there are also other things, and that in a good school, a school that really values multilingualism and wants children to be valued for all the languages, then if they've got an EAL specialist team there, have a look at what they actually do and how they do it, and how does that impact on the whole community as well. I think be a little bit discerning and really ask some poignant questions before you maybe commit to a school, because it's quite easy to promote and say you're doing X, Y, and Z. But yeah, be a little bit discerning. You know, what does that look like? The students can stay in the classroom, of course they can, but the teachers all need to know how, and they need to have a commitment to developing positive attitudes in the classroom amongst all the students towards multilingualism and EAL learners. I've rambled a bit, sorry about that.
No, I think you've put the point across very well, Deb. So I think you've reiterated my thoughts. So, you know, it's basically, you know, like we were discussing earlier, it's an additive, it's not a deficit, you know, it's a plus.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, never look at it as a negative, and you know, and yes, there will always be worries perhaps if you have with multiple languages at home. Never see it as a negative. You know, don't question yourself, be self-assured. You know, you are the one who's bringing up your children, and it's all part of your identity and who you are.
Yes.
You know,
and
be the polyglot. That's what I say.
Yeah.
be the polyglot. And something that we didn't touch now so far was also the fact that having several teachers and EAL teachers, someone who is expert in multilingualism and knows how children who have multiple languages learn languages, is also a very big benefit to spot certain learning disabilities, anything that goes on. I don't want to highlight this and say this is the only way. No, it's not, but it can help. And this is also something where then some parents say, well, my child is turning silent, is not speaking or whatever. And you can then encourage them, or tell them this is a phase, or what else can be done at home, outside of the school, and what we are doing at school in small groups so the child feels more at ease, etc. So that is a little point that I wanted to add as well, for those who maybe worry or don't know if we have to face this. Is this something that can be helped with or not? And I know for experience and also because I know the school that it is possible. So
yeah, and just thinking of what you're saying, Ute, as well, it's made me think of when if some children, like we've had some situations where children have had speech or language delays in their personal languages, and when children perhaps through the eyes of our internal assessment systems, that it's taken a little bit longer, and looking at all the other external factors, we see that we need to find out more about what were the milestones with the language development in the personal languages, for instance, or have there been any other areas that we need to be made aware of, or research or find out about in speech and language, through the speech and language therapy, therapists in their personal languages, for instance, or additional services.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I have the final question. It's like the final countdown, it seems. But this is something that Titso and I were very interested in. So how does EAL, or whatever kind of language or linguistic support, benefit from AI? And this in a very broad sense. So I mentioned at some point, think about Duolingo. Think about also Google Translate, which is much better than, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So you can surely use it more.
A great deal. Yes, it's most definitely beneficial. That's what, again, we've discussed. It's an area that we feel we would like to explore further, because I'm sure, there are plenty of other AI tools out there that we're not aware of. So it would be great if anybody who is listening to this can share further details in this area, like you said, Duolingo, Google Translate, Microsoft Translator, and I know another colleague is using DeepL as another translation tool. Deb, do you have any other?
Yeah, well, a teaching assistant shared with me today how she uses an app that's on our school devices, and the name of it escapes me right now, but she uses it to help students who are not yet at the written level of English for whatever reason, and it might be they're just too young, and they record what they want to say, and then it's turned into a QR code, and then that can be stuck into their book, and then the parents or other teachers can scan it and listen to the child speaking. And I just think that is fantastic, because that really helps us to hear the student voice, the child's voice, but it also captures where they are at that moment in time. Yes. So there are apps like that, which we're making use of, and we're, as Kuldeep said, it's something we're exploring further at the moment.
Yes.
Well, it is a hot topic. It's moving at breakneck speed. What we're talking about today will be very different from what we'll be talking about, in June or at the end of the year. Definitely, all these things with ChatGPT. The second ChatGPT came out, then we're talking about Bard, and then we're talking about all these other platforms. It just can't keep up. And then these guys, they come up with lists of things that AI can do. and then the next day it's another new list, and it's amazing how fast it's moving. But definitely it gets more and more tailored and custom made to individual needs, and I think what we need to do is really understand how to make the best use of for whatever you're going for.
Yes.
So,
no, absolutely, yes. And to use them as a tool, not as
Indeed.
a replacement, right? There was another thing that, no, it's not going to be replaced. We need the personal connection and yes, the conversation and communication between humans, please. I would like to share a very lovely comment from Elizabeth de Libero. Thank you for sharing this session. Knowing Kuldeep and Deb, I know, and I'm constantly impressed by their work and passion, as I am as well. However, it was wonderful to hear them speak and share their expertise in this session. The conversation was fascinating and highlighted the benefits of supporting multilingualism. Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for this very encouraging and positive response and comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So it is the top of the hour. All of a sudden, as you know, I mentioned at the very beginning of this year, it just feels like my life is it's accelerating every day. It's incredible. So another 1 hour just went right by. And we want to thank our special guests. Thank you, Deborah and Kuldeep. Really enriching discussion, and a nice way to wrap it up with Elizabeth's comment at the end there. Really represents what we feel, right, Ute?
Absolutely, yes. And I would like to round it up and to emphasize really the work that you're doing is amazing. It's encouraging not only for the children, but also for the parents. And this needs to be spread the word about this.
Yeah.
The need of these kind of supports. And I always say, you know, depending on in which language you use the word support, people say always, oh, there's a deficit of something. But support is also, we need to be able to ask for help. If we ask for help, this means that we know that we cannot do it by ourselves. And that is not a weakness. That is actually something, a great skill to have. So maybe we should have, change this word of support with something else. But well, yes. Thank you very, very much, Deborah and Kuldeep, for taking the time and being our guests today. And I'm sure that many, many will benefit from what you have shared. Thank you very much.
Yes, I hope you enjoyed yourself, and hope we've done our part in spreading the word and awareness. Like I think you mentioned earlier, you know, we'd like the parents to know what's going behind the scenes of this type of support in EAL and what they are not seeing. And all the work that goes into it. So definitely we're spreading the word. We're doing what we do best here at Raising Multilinguals Live, taking cutting edge information, making it easily accessible to the end users, which mostly are our parents and other language professionals. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
it's a great way to kick off our year 2024, and we do wish all our audience a wonderful year and a very prosperous year for everybody. Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Kuldeep, once again for helping us kick it off.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
It's been a honor.
Tot de volgende keer. Bye.